Okay. I think the problem is when you start thinking of the attribute of omnipresence in something that you say, like, I don't know, that you subscribe to different things, that you have all these potential labels that you just say, you get this one, you get that one, you get that one. When rather the notion of omnipotence rather is merely a label, as a resulting label of being the originator of a particular thing, being that which we can talk about, the physical universe. So it's merely by his action of creating the physical world that he is called omnipotent. It's not because we dreamed up this notion of a guy and we needed him to serve this particular function.
That seems to be a bit of a non sequitur. I mean, just because God created the universe doesn't mean he could have done it a different way. There's no reason for... Oh, well, no, this is assumed. Again, I mean, how do you appeal to qualities that you can't contemplate or you can't actually fathom or you can't actually accentuate? I mean, if you can't reach God, well, can you reach God to find out? Well, can you reach God to find out if he could have done it differently? Is there a way for you to reach out to God and say, could you have created the world a different way than you did?
Yes, that's that separates the man from the animals, in that man can conceive of that which does not exist. We can operate under the assumption that the world operates in a world that does not exist. And when you're dealing with void, you have only potentiality. And when you have creation and potentiality. And those of us who are delusional are operating in that potentiality. It's identical with what God would have known.
Right, but what I'm saying here is that the idea that God can do anything is presumed. Just because he had the power to create a world that was then maintained to act in a particular way, right? So God created certain qualities about the universe, and those universe are constraints within which we must act. Doesn't mean that God could have created a universe with different qualities. Just because he did it one way doesn't mean he couldn't have done it a different way. I mean,
well, if he couldn't have done it another way,
we're assuming attributes.
If he couldn't have done it another way, then that which was prohibiting him from doing it another way is suddenly more godly than the God that we're talking about now. In which case, we would switch the conversation to that God which inhibits the Creator. If you want to say that God is different from the Creator, that's fine. But in the end, you always had the ability to know what was done and what could have been, regardless of whether or not he had the ability to do something else. What would have inhibited, in the case that he was inhibited, would have been God itself.
You're equivocating, though. I mean, you're equivocating. Your problem with the natural realm is that to say that laws that are pertaining to the natural realm, i.e. if we say that there are certain binding restrictions about the natural realm, because we know the natural realm is all based in consequent, right? So there's something, cause and effect, and as a result, it couldn't have started, couldn't have been... I'm not necessarily, by the way, buying out of the possibility of some kind of eternal circularity in the world itself, but let's say we say that there's no way we can have an infinite regress, and that we need to appeal to some kind of God character for this, some kind of supernatural character that can maintain this kind of thing for us. Well then, how do you know that the supernatural realm acts in the same way? It might not. So it might
Same
just
way of
have...
What? Same way of what? Talking too fast. Same way of what?
Same way that our realm acts in a certain way, right? So you say that the natural world needs to infer a creator, because the natural world is a world of cause and effect, is a world that only exists as cause and effect relation. So if God's plane doesn't exist in that same sense, then you don't have to now presume that God would have had to have had another God to give him his restraints. His restraints may just be part of his realm. If his realm is not causally related, and that's your assumption about this realm is a causally related realm, then there may be no need to appeal to some causal relation that affected those causal relations. It would just be the status quo. And I would argue that about the world itself. I think you're equivocating. I mean, I'd rather it's a fallacy of composition to say that. You say that because the things in the world are correlated by means of cause and effect. And then we have to then presume that the world itself, the plane of existence itself, needs a causal factor itself, is to assume something about the entire world or universe. Let's say I'm using world in the same sense as universe. Is to assume something about the universe because of the things within the universe.
No,
is that clear?
it is no. Well, maybe it's clear, but I don't think it's correct in that all we're doing with the problem of infinite regress is just solving it in saying that the motion that is present that it cannot be begat from any physical thing, came from something that was other than physical. And that's where the line of reasoning stops. It ceases. Everything beyond that point, we have to make arguments from other premises. But the fact that the world operates in a series of bodies that move, and the bodies themselves do not originate their motion, then the origination of that motion was not a body. And that's all we have left. I mean, that's all that it is. Now, if you want to say that what did originate the movement in our world had to be operated in the same way, that it was restrained with certain things or it wasn't restrained, is a matter of just, you're right, there's nothing you could do about that. It's very complex on the other side of the veil. It could be very simple.
Right.
In the end, we can't really talk about it, other than we can see this line, this cord that runs underneath it, and say that it's connected to something.
The thing is, it's assumed that it's linear, and I mean, here's my issue, right?
What's linear? What's linear?
The causal relation, that there's some linear causal factor, that that the Earth is moving, like the universe moves in a certain direction. Oh, a circularity.
Circularity.
It would assume determinism. It would assume, and in fact, it might even revoke cause and effect itself. To say the universe exists as a circularity, that all events maneuver into each other, and that there's no need to appeal to some outside factor, so that part one will lead into part whatever 100 say is the final number, and back to part one over and over and over again. So it assumes that, but I don't take up that particular opinion. I think we can get out of it without that assertion. But that's one that doesn't seem to be problematic to me. That the circularity exists, and that all things lead into another via the circularity. There's no need to appeal to an original causal factor, because the whole chain has existed permanently. I mean, the idea that, why appeal that which constitutes the things in the universe doesn't need to be constrained to the same characteristics that the things in the universe itself are constrained to, that it makes up. So
say that again. Say that one more time.
So
go ahead.
Let's say energy and matter, right? That which is the building blocks of the universe itself, right? Need not be constrained to the same character traits. Let's say, the need for creation that the things in it need as well. Those things themselves may in fact need no creator. There's no reason to presume a creator about them, as far as I'm concerned. I feel like it's
I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not following you. I need less pronouns. Less its. But seriously, less its.
Right. Okay,
all I'm saying is that if you see bodies in this world, if you see motion in this world, and if you cannot see that the origin of the motion is a body, then it could not exist in either an infinite regress or a circular regress. Because both, that's the one opportunity the theist has of using Occam's razor on the atheist, in that you say that the beginning of the universe was not just a bunch of bodies and that energy was injected into it, but you had to always believe that there was this moving thing, that it was not only bodies, but also energy zipping around in circles. And never tiring, never dissipating, never submitting to entropy, nothing like that. It's just around and around and around and around and around. That's a problem. I mean, if we're dealing with the... Okay. Speak and be heard.
I don't see the need to presume issue, is what I'm saying. I don't see why...
There is a need to presume something. There's a need to presume the origin of something that cannot originate from a physical thing.
The thing is that we're presuming necessity for origination. I don't think these things,
how do you know it
primal
exists?
Factors of the universe, need...
How do you know that anything can move?
First of all, there's the essential problem of saying something goes in or out of existence. I don't know what that would mean to say. When something is existent, it doesn't make sense to say that it falls out of existence. What would that even mean to say? As far as we understand, there's no such thing as that. Things don't fall out of existence or come into existence.